in public policy polls, in public polls, affinity polls that come out of Israel, the societal understanding of the Gaza problem or the Palestinian problem is virtually identical to Nazi Germany at this point. Holy, that is so crazy. Let's continue. Israeli strike kills dozens sheltering in Gaza school, officials say.
Welcome back. Let's return to our top story. More than 50 Palestinians have been killed in 2 separate Israeli airstrikes overnight, including a strike on a school that was sheltering displaced families. The twin attacks are part of a broader Israeli offensive in the north of the territory that has escalated over the past week amid growing international pressure on the Israelis to allow more aid into Gaza. Israel does not allow international media organizations, including the BBC, to report from Gaza. From Jerusalem, here's Yolande Nell.
Israeli strike kills dozens sheltering in Gaza school is very different as far as headlines goes from the BBC. Name dropping Israel is huge. That is something that has not happened before. By the way, I'm not going to show you this video because you can clearly see a little girl on fire in this video. Okay. The fact that they're even showcasing that on BBC is crazy. The fact that they're showing that this is a war crime, like openly stating that this is a war crime. Oh, I thought she didn't survive. I thought the girl on the video didn't specifically survive. But again, they are not saying that this was a force of nature. They're not saying that this was a force of nature. They're openly saying it was Israel. They're not saying Palestinians died. They're saying Israel killed them. All this stuff is different from their coverage in the past. Okay? They're not saying Hamas-backed Gazan health ministry. Like, these were all the different ways and very meaningful ways where the media, mainstream media specifically, manufactures consent and normalizes this kind of violence, or at least like shelters Israel from being responsible for this kind of violence, because a lot of people don't have the capacity to pay attention to every single thing that's going on, you know? So they just like read the headlines and they move on. And if the headlines are not actually saying Israel did this, then ultimately they don't think maybe Israel is responsible for this. Right? Is the full standing army of the IOF being deployed new since no Western outlet seems to have reported on this specifically? Yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Warda Sheikh Khalil made it out alive, but her mother and 2 older siblings did not. A classroom turned shelter turned inferno overnight. Israel's military says it attacked what it called key terrorists here in Gaza City and took steps to...
Why do you think they're doing it now? What has changed? I think that people think that your voices don't matter. People think that your protests don't matter. And it's understandable to succumb to nihilism, okay? Especially after 19 months of unlimited death and destruction. But it does matter, because all of that pressure eventually will cause the dam to break. And we are approaching that at a rapid clip right now. The dam is breaking. The dam is breaking, where the consistent protests have finally caused the Western leadership to take a different position. And when they take like a more aggressive position against Israel, that causes these mainstream outlets in the Western world, that gives them a permission to also start accurately covering the events that are unfolding. A similar thing happened, a microcosm of this example I'm giving you is exactly what happened with Kilmar Abrego Garcia's story when Senator Chris Van Hollen went down to El Salvador and the media started covering it. All of a sudden, the attitude swung. in the direction of negativity for Donald Trump's immigration enforcement agenda. It was his most popular agenda up until that moment. But now that the media had started covering it honestly, truthfully, focusing on it, all of a sudden people were getting resentful about what Trump was doing. And that is precisely what's going on in Europe as well. Alonso Gurmendi is absolutely correct, okay, with this assessment. I'm going to read it to you, and this is my assessment as well. I disagree that Europe turning on Israel has anything to do with shock of their cruelty. Two things simply have conflated at the same time. One, leaders hoped that Gaza would fade into the background and people would forget, but they never did, which increased its political cost. Trump betrayed Europe, which meant European leaders needed to find a way to signal both A, their disapproval of the new U.S., and B, their security and foreign policy independence and self-sufficiency. Turning the heat on Israel was the easiest way to do this. This is, in fact, exactly what Lula did in 2010 to signal his intent to distance South America from the U.S. Brazil got the entire region to recognize Palestine, and it worked. Things were never the same. The key thing to watch is the upcoming high-level conference on the two-state solution, which is the venue where the anti-MAGA West will make its move to distance from U.S. leadership by having key states recognize Palestine. I really do not think Macron, Starmer, etc. simply got too sad about Palestinians. They could not care less about them. They are simply trying to kill two birds with one stone, appease an angry electorate, and distance diplomatically and strategically from the U.S. What they are ironically doing is what I was demanding Kamala Harris do, and aesthetically distance herself from Joe Biden by using this key issue. Even from a cynical position, even from a cold-hearted sociopathic calculation for Kamala Harris, this is exactly what I was demanding from the campaign. Even if you don't care about the Palestinians, you should still come out and make a statement that distances yourself from the incredibly unpopular Biden administration if you want to win the election. That's precisely what these European leaders are doing. But here's the thing. Many of you will say, oh, well, this is ineffective. This is meaningless. Hundreds of thousands of people have died so far. They've been murdered by Israel. It's a genocide. It's not going to put an end to it. And I always will tell you, these things take time, okay? They take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But this is directionally in the right direction. This is directionally a good thing that leadership in these countries move in the direction of Palestinian emancipation, and that's a good thing, even if it's just for pure aesthetics. Okay, why is that a good thing? Why is that a good thing? Because even if it's just for pure aesthetics, like I said, it gives media, state media like the BBC or media in the Western world, more permission to cover what Israel is doing by directly blaming Israel for the violence instead of trying to actively contextualize said violence and defend Israel's violence against the Palestinians. That narrative shift is very important for your parents, for your grandparents, and the people who do rely on understanding the world by just simply looking at whatever the fucking mainstream narratives are. Because eventually it gets to a point where every single person has basically encountered, even if it's just for a brief moment, the truth about what Israel's doing, the truth about Israel's cruelty. And that is a never-ending cycle because that creates even more public pressure. That means even more people will go out and protest in the streets. So then it gets to a point where Western leadership that have championed themselves as like the saviors of liberal democracy will have to either continue to maintain apathy, continue to demonstrate apathy, and act like they don't care and that the democratic process is not real at all, and it is completely a falsehood that they've presented, and they're not even seeking to defend this process or the international rule-based order or whatever. They're just completely done with that. Cast aside any notion of democracy in the West. Either they will play the role of the role of servile client states that don't care about their own individual population's discontent with their allegiance to Israel, or they have to make changes They have to genuinely make changes and maybe even apply sanctions to the state of Israel and apply pressure to the state of Israel in an effort to appease the crowds that are fucking angry. Okay? That's it. That's it. That's where we're at. Anyway, let's continue.
To stop civilians getting hurt, but children were killed. It was horrific, says one displaced mother, pulled from the rubble with her son.
It was indescribable. Body parts, charred bodies, the smell of burning. I swear to God, our hearts have died. We're shaken. We're exhausted. Enough.
Those killed in their sleep were carried to their final resting places today. And the number of dead continued to rise. 17 members of one family reportedly killed in an Israeli strike in the north. As Israel's military steps up its offensive, the chief of staff says Hamas is under immense pressure. Israel plans to seize all of Gaza. A big supporter of that is its hardline minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, marking Israel's Jerusalem Day with a provocative visit to the city's most contested holy site.
We held a prayer here for the well-being of the hostages, that they all return home safely, and for victory in the war.
There's mass hunger.
I think when this happens, by the way, I think when this happens, like when enough pressure comes from Western public, which is we're there already, and then the Western leadership, not America, but like at least the other countries in Europe and whatnot, start using this as an issue to say we are not on board with this, to appease the crowds that are understandably resentful, and also to decouple from America and American influence, even if it's an aesthetic choice, even if it's simply just like a symbolic choice. Eventually, Israel will basically discard Benjamin Netanyahu, because at that point he will have outlived his usefulness for American interests in the region. And I suspect that they will try to actively present a liberal Zionist future for Israel, despite the fact that there is no real coalition for that as it stands. Because from what we have seen in public policy polls, affinity polls that come out of Israel, the societal understanding of the Gaza problem or the Palestinian problem is virtually identical to Nazi Germany at this point, and their analysis of the quote unquote Jewish problem. So I think they will try to present this in the future. They will eventually, when all is said and done, when the dust is settled, they will say, "Oh, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's such a violent guy. Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's such a violent radical guy. Look, we have these, this new wave, this new coalition of like liberal Zionists. If they can even reach a significant enough, even if they can reach a significant enough number to build a coalition, okay, to build a governing coalition in Israel, which I don't even think that's possible. Eventually, they'll try to massage it in the Western world with like liberal Zionist framework to make it seem like Israel's always just trying to do its best, but it's just like surrounded by enemies, all this stuff. Here is Mersheimer saying something similar as well here.
It's not just these particular leaders who support this policy inside of Israel. You don't see hardly any protests among the Israeli public regarding this genocidal policy. It's truly shocking. And when you look at what the Western elites are doing, they're hardly doing anything to prevent it. It's just truly amazing. It's sickening. I don't know what else to say. I didn't think anything like this would ever happen, but it is happening.
All right, to turn your stomach a little bit, this is a former member of the Knesset and former member of Prime Minister Netanyahu's party, Chris Cutt, number 10.
Every child in Gaza is the enemy. We are at war with the Gazan entity, the Gazan terror entity, which we ourselves established in Gaza, in Oslo, and in the disengagement. The disengagement that Prime Minister Netanyahu voted in favor of, that is the enemy now. Every such child to whom you are now giving milk, in another 15 years will rape your daughters and slaughter your children. We need to conquer Gaza and settle it. And not a single Gazan child should remain there. Let's stop telling ourselves this deception just to score points in this game between pro-Bibi and anti-Bibi. This isn't about left or right, it's about winning this war, and it's about justice. When will we learn? When will we learn?
You're saying that this attitude is prevalent amongst the Israeli public.
I think that that's exactly right. I don't see any evidence that there's an uprising in the Israeli public against the genocide. There are lots of protests in Israel, but those protests have to deal with the hostages and relations between the IDF and the government.
It's crazy that a famous international relations scholar has been blackballed and reduced to doing the third-rate podcast circuit, all because he's critical of Israel. I wouldn't say that. And also, his time will come. Mersheimer has had a lot of prescient takes, both as it relates to Russia and Ukraine in the lead up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And he's also, I mean, he's not like a leftist by any means, chatters. Please make no mistake. But he's also obviously incredibly on the money when it comes to Israel. He has a fantastic understanding of this dynamic here. I would go so far as to say that I feel like sometimes that sometimes I think he overestimates, I guess, like the lobby, the Israeli lobby. But even then, I think it's incredibly, I mean, his analysis is sober and very critical and necessary. But you will see people like him get more play in mainstream resources fairly soon. I mean, he still does the speaking circuit. It's not like he's not invited. Okay, he still goes and speaks at college campuses, things like that. He has Jeffrey Sachs as well. Jeffrey Sachs is another person who does this kind of thing. I'm writing an article on the denazification. This is exactly what happened with Germany after World War II. Hitler and his inner circle were scrutinized, but the ideological base of Nazism was never fully discarded. Sure, the violence was criticized, but the core of their hatred and reactionary thinking was allowed to fester. Yes. And then it was also weaponized by America because it served the interests of America, which was to eradicate any sort of like communist allegiance or communist sympathy in all of these countries. Anyway, let's continue.
But they don't have to do with stopping the genocide. I mean, you want to file all of this under the Nazification of Israel. That's where it should be filed. This is a country that's gone completely off the rails. And
you know, he wrote the book Israel Lobby. No, that's why I said I'm pretty sure he understands the leverage they have. I think it's important. I know, chat. Thank you. I mean, look, I think that the lobby in and of itself plays a tremendously important role, but and the book is great, at least like the bits and pieces that I've seen of it. Having said that, my assessment is always that the allowance given to Israel to be able to operate like this still ultimately comes back to Western interest. Okay? I feel like people that overestimate Israel's power and influence end up accidentally underestimating America's interest in Israel behaving this way. The allowance that America gives to Israel to basically fucking do USS Liberty, right? Or the allowance that America gives to Israel to have guys like Jonathan Pollard, you know, steal information and send it to Israel. And then even releasing Jonathan Pollard. Like, all of this stuff is completely done under the watchful gaze of our intelligence community. And sure, there's a lot of back and forth there. There's some in the CIA that despise Israel and some in the CIA that love Israel, right? But the point is, if it was not such a profoundly important part of America's grand design for the region, at least by their estimation, they would not let it happen. It's that simple. That's it. Do you see what I mean? And I think a lot of people basically abdicate the responsibility of America. They like shelter America's responsibility in this process whenever they lean too much on the side of like, well, Israel is like hypnotized Americans or something, you know? That's not the case. Like, or people that will say stuff like, what do you call it? People that say stuff like, oh, there's like Mossad operations. That's the reason why my big, beautiful Republican American congressperson is so pro-Israel, because he's blackmailed, you know? Can you name a relationship in history similar to Israel and America relations? No, I cannot. There is no comparison. The reason why there is no comparison is because, like, it's obvious that as a favored client state, Israel is significantly more influential and significantly more powerful than any other favored nation that is under the banner of American empire. Okay, a good comparison is Turkey and Azerbaijan. No, it's not a good comparison, because Turkey doesn't get to do whatever the fuck it wants. Turkey is still also endlessly controllable, and Turkey can't do half of the shit that Israel does. The greatest example between Turkey would be, oh, you mean between Turkey and Azerbaijan? I thought you meant like Turkey for America. Turkey gets to do Israel shit. I thought you were, is your head smaller than average from inbreeding? Yeah, that's what happened. It's very funny to say that I might have been inbred as a white nationalist who is advancing racial purity politics. Who do you think is more inbred? Me or the average fucking Nazi who thinks that they must maintain the purity of the white race? There are examples of like other countries that have vassal states like this, but the relationship between Israel and America is so it's just difficult to make accurate comparisons. I don't know. Anyway, let's continue.
The more that you see it in operation, the more it looks like the Germans under Hitler. This is just hard to believe. We're talking about eradicating all of the Palestinians in Gaza, murdering them. This is hard to believe. This is the sort of things that the Germans did. It was supposed to be never again. I don't see any evidence that people in Israel believe in the principle of never again, certainly when it applies to the Palestinians. And people in the West are hardly lifting a finger. This is a categorically reprehensible situation.
Yeah. So the reason I don't think there's a comparison between America and Israel with any other country on the planet, because like someone was saying like, well, China uses Pakistan, but I feel like if Pakistan was doing espionage against China, China would not allow that to continue. Or if Pakistan, I don't know, killed like an entire, like it killed a bunch of like Chinese Air Force pilots or something, China would not allow that relationship to continue in the same way. That dynamic would be ruined in an irreparable manner. That's why I'm saying there is nothing. Like you say Russia and Belarus. Okay, can Belarus kill Russian troops and get away with it? No. Also, you have to understand, at most, you have to recognize that at most the regional leaders that we are talking about are not even engaging in imperialism in the way that the Western world is engaging in imperialism. At most, they're doing irredentist actions, which would still be obviously consequential, inappropriate, wrong, right? Morally incorrect. But irredentism and imperialism have significant differences. Like, look at, and the most basic function of imperialism is like, in the most reductive ways, if you look at this, it's like, look at where America is, look at where the fuck Israel is, okay? As opposed to like China and Pakistan and the relationship that they have is, or Russia and Belarus and the relationship that they have is not comparable to Israel and America, because America wants to have a foothold in a region that they are very, very far away from, okay? That's why it's so unique. Why skip Mersheimer? I'm not. His clip ended.
In Gaza, even after Israel eased its 2-month-long total blockade last week. It wants aid delivery to be taken over by a new organisation. But its head has now resigned, saying the idea doesn't stick to humanitarian principles. Today, young Warda returned to the ruins of the bombed shelter in Gaza City, as yet unaware of her personal loss. Amid growing international criticism over the suffering caused by this war, her trauma will only deepen.
And we can now join Yolande live in Jerusalem. Let's focus a bit firstly then, Yolande, on aid. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it's controversial, it's backed by the US and by Israel, but it's so complicated getting aid in, and they say they've started to begin their work there. How much do we know about what they're doing and how they're going to move around, how they plan to distribute aid?
Well, first of all, remember that aid is still in dangerously short supply across the entire Gaza Strip, despite the fact that Israel did begin to ease slightly its total blockade that has gone on for 11 weeks, just 1 week ago. Now, we had a statement from this newly created Gaza Humanitarian Foundation early in the day, saying that its trucks were loaded and ready to go. It planned in the next week to reach 1 million Palestinians. That's half of the population of the Strip. It's supposed to be working out of this handful of distribution sites really concentrated in the south. And its work will involve using armed security contractors.
Yeah, so this is huge, right? The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a humanitarian aid organization, or at least like is masquerading as a humanitarian aid organization, but it's actually created with the express purpose of dominating the Strip and basically creating traps in what Israel considers sterile zones, right? Cleaned areas, in an effort to trap Palestinians and potentially, as Jeremy Scale says, like almost like a Looney Tunes style contraption, like trap Palestinians and then forcibly remove them from the Gaza Strip by dangling aid, limited amounts of aid in front of them. Okay? This is super illegal. Like it's stuff that America has only entertained in clandestine operations, knowing full well of how illegal it is. Okay? This is like what we are talking about right here has, I don't think, ever been conducted in broad daylight in front of people's eyes in this cartoonish way ever before. In this day and age, especially with like the immediate information that you can get, it's like doing the final solution in broad daylight, which Israel is also doing. Okay? The goal here for Israel is to specifically create concentration camps within the already existing open air prison that is a concentration camp that's turned into a death camp, right? In the Gaza Strip. But make it smaller, like make those concentration camps smaller and make Gaza unlivable, as they have already worked to make it unlivable, and utilize the aid, the limited amount of aid that they let into the Strip, to trap Palestinians and then basically kick them out, like forcibly ethnically displace them. Here is Ahmed Al-Gobari, a freelance Yemeni journalist, talking about this plan, saying, come for food, don't go back. That's the chilling logic behind a new Israeli aid plan for Gaza. It's not just about delivering aid. It's about redrawing Gaza's population map under the guise of humanitarian relief. And of course, a lot of people have been critical of this, including the United Nations, because this concept is directly at odds. Like, you cannot be the belligerent party that will then use a military that is aligned with your belligerent party or your own mercenaries that you have bought and paid for to distribute aid in the process of doing an ethnic cleansing. Like, it makes no goddamn sense. There has to be an international organization or a non-government organization specifically that does not fly the flag of Israel that is distributing this aid. That's the whole purpose. Which is why the United Nations immediately was like, we can't work with this. This is impossible. Like, this is completely unacceptable. It goes against the whole purpose of humanitarian aid. Okay? Israel also simultaneously has been doing this crazy thing, again, incredibly depraved thing, for months now, utilizing ISIS, like straight up utilizing ISIS and criminal elements within the Gaza Strip to actually steal aid, arming them, and even giving them like official protection from drones, or with drones rather, with Israeli drones, to allow them to go and steal the fucking aid at the point of distribution. And now they've taken it one step further. They're actually letting these guys do the distribution of the aid. Hamas in the past has been able to at least like find the criminal elements and kill them and put together like a curfew. But Israel is doing its very best to ensure that instability continues. Did you say ISIS in Gaza? Yes, of course. There are ISIS-aligned, ISIS affiliates in Gaza. There has been a consistent back and forth. Like there have been warring factions inside of Gaza as well. Yes. We're going to look for an article talking about this. Drop Site has covered this. I believe Haaretz has actually ironically covered this as well. But here is one quick point on it. ISIS-linked gang leader behind Gaza aid looting resurfaces under Israeli protection. In Gaza, criminal gang leader Yaser Abu Shabbab and others like him have reemerged under the guise of securing aid, donning uniforms and claiming to protect the limited humanitarian assistance entering the Strip. Quds News Network reports that Abu Shabbab has established a fortified base in an Israeli-controlled zone in Rafah, now a kill zone. These groups operate under Israeli military protection, routinely looting aid convoys, especially in areas like Eastern Rafah and Kerem Shalom. Abu Shabbab is a known leader of armed gangs linked to ISIS and involved in looting aid under Israeli protection. Last year, the New Arab reported that Abu Shabbab, among others, was working alongside hundreds of thieves under the protection of Israeli occupation forces near the Kerem Shalom crossing, the primary entry point for aid convoys. He comes from the Tarabin Bedouin tribe, which spans from Sinai to southern Gaza and the Negev desert, and has been identified in a UN memo as the main influential figure behind the widespread and organized looting of aid convoys in Gaza. There was a Haaretz article on it as well. The Israeli army is allowing gangs in Gaza to loot aid trucks and extort protection fees from drivers. They are doing it under the watchful gaze of the Israeli occupation. The Israeli occupation does not want the aid to be distributed evenly to the Palestinian population. This is why they've executed the police force in Gaza as well, and then claimed that they were fucking Hamas. Yeah, no shit. Everyone that is working on the civilian side is also a part of the Hamas party, okay? That doesn't mean that they're fucking militants against Israel. And yet that doesn't matter. They're literally killing like trash collectors and saying, well, this was a Hamas trash collector. It's like, yeah, I know. Or they'll kill fucking the family members of this doctor, and then they'll go, hey, well, this doctor has photos wearing a Hamas banner. And it's like, yeah, dude, because that's the governing fucking party of Gaza. What do you mean? Of course. It's like saying, well, sorry, these guys are fucking Republicans, so we just have to kill every single child in the region because their parents were Republicans. There's a difference between being an enemy combatant and being a supporter of a fucking party. It's so mind-boggling that 19 months in and we still can't make this distinction between non-combatants. The same goes for the journalist that they assassinated, Hasan. They literally killed him. They shot him when he was in a tent. They burned him alive. And then he somehow survived that first process. And he was in a hospital when Israel killed him in his hospital bed while he was recovering in his fucking hospital bed. And then they said, well, he was, there's a photo of him and Yahya Sinwar. Okay, so what? So the fuck what? What do you mean? They literally said the reason why they killed him was because he had entered alongside Hamas militants into Israel proper on October 7th. Yeah, he's a fucking journalist, dude. Yeah, see? Oh, you're talking about Shabbab, this guy, yeah. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Of course, he's a god. No, I'm not talking about Hasan Shabbab. I'm talking about one of the most famous photojournalists in Gaza. Hasan what's his Eslaiya, I think. Yeah, Hasan Eslaiya. He is one of the most famous. Hasan Shabbab also was killed by Israel, obviously. But Hasan Eslaiya is a incredibly famous photojournalist. And yes, he also documented the Hamas militancy and the Al-Aqsa flood. Yes, he did that. He's a fucking journalist. Of course he did that. What do you mean? Like, this is insane. The idea that, like, oh, he was documenting what fucking Hamas was doing at the Al-Aqsa flood, or what PFLP was doing in the Al-Aqsa flood on October 7th. That's the reason why we killed him, is an insane admission, right? Like, that is an insane admission. You're saying, like, you killed a journalist because he was doing journalism. Anyway, multiple reports, including from multiple reports, including from Haaretz and the Washington Post, confirmed that these gangs have been seen looting in full view of Israeli forces who neither intervene nor prevent the theft. Abu Shabbab, recent active again on social media, boasts of his gang's coordination, while his armed men beat aid drivers and demand protection money, worsening conditions for the starving population. Meanwhile, Israel has systematically targeted Palestinian police and security officers assigned to guard aid deliveries. Despite international pressure, only a trickle of aid has been allowed in, with Israel striking those attempting to protect it. While Israel enables and facilitates the looting, its propaganda blames Hamas for stealing aid, deflecting responsibility, and masking its own role in orchestrating chaos and famine in Gaza. This is the guy. Think about that. Eslaiya, Hasan Eslaiya. Hasan Eslaiya, sorry. I mean, this is also one of those things that, like, most people don't even know about, right? They just hear, like, Hamas is stealing aid. No evidence for this at all from Israel. As a matter of fact, Israel has revealed that they have no evidence for this at all. And the only thing they have to show for it is, like, these fucking criminal gangs that get to steal this aid and get to loot this aid literally in direct view of the Israeli drones. And the Israeli drones don't shoot these guys, even though they're armed, but they shoot the actual fucking civilian police force. They bomb the civilian police force for actually apprehending and killing these fucking ISIS affiliate gangs. Sounds like Hasan is a liar. Brother, what are you saying? Like, it is, when I tell you something, there is a million different points backing up that statement, okay? Just because you have never encountered this information before. His name, lol, what is it? It's a joke. Oh, he was saying, he was talking about the other guy. Oh, okay, I misunderstood. Sorry, I thought you were coming in here to be like, you're lying. He's talking about the photojournalist. Yeah. Here is Mohammed Shahada Israeli-backed ISIS-linked warlord, drug leader, and gang leader Yaser Abu Shabbab is back, this time suited up in brand new military gear, manning a checkpoint in Rafah under IDF protection. Abu Shabbab's gang have been the key culprits of looting aid with Israel's blessing. The looting often happened about 100 meters away from Israeli tanks and troops. No Gazan is allowed in the Rafah, which Israel depopulated and declared an extermination zone, meaning any Gazan that walks in Rafah is murdered immediately by Israeli troops. So to see Abu Shabbab in Rafah showing off his gun and military gear provided to him by Israel is extremely concerning sign of what lies ahead. Haaretz has also confirmed the existence of these gangs that are looting the aid under IDF protection and their affiliations with groups like ISIS. The Washington Post said those gangs establish a military-like compound in Rafah from which they loot aid. Here it is. I saw one Israeli tank and a Palestinian armed with a Kalashnikov rifle just 100 meters from it, a senior official from one organization working in Gaza tells Haaretz. The armed men beat the drivers and take all the food if they aren't paid protection money. It's so bad that the fucking UAE called it out. And the UAE has no sympathies for the Palestinian population whatsoever. Remember, UAE, alongside Saudi Arabia, are two of the biggest Israel dick riders in the region. UAE condemns Israel for forcing aid trucks to go through red zones where Israel-backed ISIS-linked criminal gangs and drug dealers loot aid under IDF protection. UAE says out of 24 trucks that entered yesterday, only one arrived safely to the warehouses. UAE was supposed to bring 103 trucks into Gaza yesterday, but Israel only allowed in 24. Red zones is what Israel calls extermination zones, like Rafah at the moment, which connotates areas where no Gazan is allowed and anyone stepping a foot in them is instantly killed or detained. Several gangs operate in those red zones under full IDF protection, who always only fire at policemen that try to prevent looting. I don't understand how anyone remotely affiliated with ISIS would want to do anything to do with Israel unless they were actively shooting at them. Brother, Israel has directly collaborated with ISIS affiliates in Syria as well. ISIS is basically a State Department cutout. Who do you think was allowing ISIS to continue operating in Syria even by way of a third party, specifically Turkey? Israel has always cooperated with ISIS. Israel has treated ISIS militants in its hospitals. Israel has offered logistical support to ISIS militants in Syria. This is the Haaretz article. Defense officials confirmed that the IDF is aware of the problem. They said that at one point the government had even considered making these clans, to which the armed men belong, responsible for distributing aid to Gaza's residents, even though some of the clan's members are involved in terrorism and some are even affiliated with extreme organizations like the Islamic State. So when you hear people talk about like, oh, Hamas is looting aid, it is the exact opposite. Israel, one, does not let aid get into the Gaza Strip. And then the aid that it lets into the Gaza Strip is marginal, is minimal. It's nowhere near the amount of aid necessary for 2 million people that are currently trapped within the Gaza Strip. Okay? And then they want chaos at the point of distribution as well. They want chaos at the point of distribution. They want footage that they can point to be like, see, these guys are stealing the aid. To claim that it's actually Hamas stealing the aid. And if you were to follow this to its logical conclusion, you would realize that it's also idiotic in and of itself. It's this idea where it's like, well, they're stealing the aid. Hamas is stealing the aid. Why? Because they're stealing the aid because they want to sell the aid. Okay, so they're going to sell the aid to who? Like they're going to make money off of selling this aid. Okay, what are they going to do with the money? Let's say that there's money in the Strip to give to Hamas for this aid. What will they do with that money? Oh, they'll purchase weapons. How? From who? How are they purchasing? What are they purchasing with the money that they're getting? You think Hamas is what, trying to buy like a PlayStation 5? Is that what's going on? They want to get the new NVIDIA. They want to get the new NVIDIA GPUs, I guess. They want to do Bitcoin mining or something. Like, I've made this joke before where like, what do you think? Like, you think there's like a Resident Evil style merchant in one of these fucking tunnels where it's like, oh, welcome to my shop. Here you can purchase all of the best weapons. Like, where do you think the weapons are going to materialize? Like, you think they're just going to, you think there's like a potion vendor somewhere in the tunnel system. Yeah. It's just so idiotic. Even when you, yeah, it's like a Dark Souls merchant where you are in the middle of a dungeon and there's like a crazy inaccessible area where there's like a Dark Souls merchant. That's how it is for Hamas. They have like a weapons procurement guy in the middle of the fucking crowded tunnel systems. Yeah. Come take a look at my potions, fine traveler. Welcome. Like, none of it makes sense. God damn, dude. Holy shit.